right. Tim,
Hey,
welcome
Ben.
back.
Yeah.
Thank you for coming back. For you all, thank you for tuning in. Welcome back to another episode of Tech Tuesday. My name is Ben.
Hey, I'm Tim.
And we've got a gambit of questions to go through today. I'm excited to be back. We took a little break last week. A lot of projects, a lot of R&D projects, but we're back at it again this week. And as I've began every Tech Tuesday for the last couple times, Tim, do you have any thoughts, quips, quibbles, fashion statement tips before we begin?
Nah, just read the literature. That's the big thing.
Yeah. Read literature. What kind? I mean, well, maybe not Tim's poetry literature, but
Nobody wants to be sad,
right,
Ben.
right. But the actual literature.
Yeah, instruction manuals and whatnot.
Question 1. Backlys? Baklys. I probably butchered that, but that's okay. I just installed the Royal Flush system to my 69 AMX 4-speed, and it works really great. The carb was tuned really good, but now I can do so much more. Regards from Norway. I think that's it's not a question, but it's definitely a fair point that there are some really good reasons why you switch from a carburetor to fuel injection. The advantages that you can get. One thing I will say that you've said a couple times is that if you have a carburetor and you're happy with it, unless you are truly desiring to go to something like fuel injection, you don't have to switch. I mean, I'm repping the company.
That's true.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, some vehicles, just for the classic nostalgia, if it's already got a good setup, it's already tuned well, I'm waffle with it.
Yeah.
If you want to go the other direction, then do it.
Yeah. I think one comment that we get, not a lot, but we have gotten in the past is, I've got this carburetor, it was running really great, and then I tried to switch to EFI. And usually people in that area don't deal a lot with electronics, don't really have a background in fuel injection, which is fine. That's why we do this.
Mm-hmm.
But you don't have to. There are things that come with switching to fuel injection that are a little bit of a learning curve. But things like fuel efficiency, you can get more power based on that efficiency. You don't have to worry about cold starts anymore. I mean, there are plenty of benefits to switching to EFI, and yeah.
I switched from my factory injection system on my 97 Tahoe, which some of you out there have seen it.
That's true. Channels on linked hours.
I went archaic with it and put the HEI in there,
Mm-hmm.
which you wouldn't think you'd do in a 97 Tahoe, using the factory computer in a tricky way to control the trans. I mean, I could put our system on there, but it's like I'd have to put a request form in, and it's like it'd take a whole day.
Nobody's got that kind of time.
20 minutes to install it.
Yeah.
It'd be like so inconvenient for me. No, but that thing, we're just over 6,000 miles on it, maybe more than that actually at this point, because I personally put about 1,000 a week on that vehicle.
Mm-hmm.
I'm getting right at 17 miles to the gallon, which is the best that 97 Tahoe has ever got.
Yeah.
Like by far, because the factory spider injection would fail in like a yearly interval. So $400 a year I'd have to invest in this just to keep it running poorly with bad fuel economy, and it'd be gutless.
Yeah.
Right now I can put I'm not going to say 10,000 RPM, 10,000 K trailer on the back, but it's, I put 6,000 pounds on a trailer, haul a tractor with it, right? It doesn't care. It's fine.
Yeah.
I set my distributor just right. The vacuum advance is working. The Killshot Classic, it just does its job, because I spent a week tuning the fuel table on that stock small block 350,
Mm-hmm.
and I left it in there.
Yep.
So whenever you flash it in, it's got a tune
Yep.
from a vehicle that I drive every day and spend a week tuning. So it's really close to what a lot of our end users are going to really want for something like the Killshot Classic. It already has basically the fuel map out of my Tahoe in it, which, it's on 33s, nothing special. It's just a Tahoe. So
Big Killshot classic guy.
I hit the key, I put it in gear. I don't even let it settle down or anything. I just go.
Drive to work. Drive to work.
The whole 7 miles to work. JM 13210. Thank you all for answering my question regarding the no start after cam swap. It is a 24x1 with a sensor in the back. Facts. I did swap for a spare sensor and thought it would be picking up a new one, so on and so forth. I did find the sync video and will verify all that once the new sensor is installed. Yeah, with our new software, up until, it was actually just the last firmware version release. It used to be you had to 100% have that cam sensor working. The 58x by 4x, the 24 by 1. Right now, if somebody does, which we get a lot in this because we get a lot of weird builds. People just throw some spicy cam they got out of swap meet into a motor that's unknown, and their buddy built it, air quotes.
Yeah.
And it's a weird combination. Now our system will ignore it. If the cam ain't syncing, it's going to say, hey, this is definitely it's a funky sensor. It's a weird signal. It's not jiving with what I'm seeing here on the crank. It's just going to ignore it. It's going to do like kind of a bank-to-bank strategy in a waste fire situation with the coils and just really help compensate for helping the end user identify if it's just something as simple as the cam sensor being funny. So it's still going to start. It's not going to run perfect, but it's going to run and drive. And you'll be able to better understand, like, hey, this is definitely cam sensor related, instead of sitting there just death cranking it forever and a day, wondering, is it the cam, or is it the crank, or is it the wiring, or is it the ECU, or is it just some crazy stuff? Or an extension harness on an LS2 that swaps some stuff. So
I mean that's huge. I mean, I like there are people that have called in and had, the engine won't start, and just to find out that that sensor's not plugged in, and then you go through the gambit of like trying to figure out what's going on, and then finally you go, oh, that's not plugged in. All of a sudden everything works. So now you don't even have that issue. Maybe you just get the engine running and it's not running the way you would really like, and you go back and look at the wiring harness to see if there's anything going on. Oh, that's not plugged in. It changes everything. So we made a video about that. I think that's a huge change, or maybe not even change, but like upgrade, if you will.
It's a more convenient thing to do, and the what drives that kind of thing is that was probably one little comment we read in a YouTube video, or somebody we talked on the phone was like,
call.
Hey, this thing, just make it not do that. I'm like, oh
yeah,
let's put it in an email and send it up. And those things, we just go over this list that we build and consider things. And if it's convenient at the time, for sure, and it's something that wasn't high priority, we just try to squeeze that in.
Yeah. Next question from the Rickster himself, FFR5155. Time for my weekly question/suggestion.
Cool.
My CAN bus connection is kind of hard to get, being tucked behind the dash because of the harness routing needing to get to the ECU in the passenger compartment. It would be really neat if you could just plug the laptop cable into the handheld. I believe that a CAN bus is either addressable, daisy chainable, or both. Enjoying the Tech Tuesdays, and my project is running much better now because of them. Keep up the great work. Rick.
It's true.
Yeah.
So we make extension wires.
But also with the CAN splitter for the trans control unit, could that ever be changed for something like this?
I'm not going to say it can't ever be changed for something like that, but right now there's this whole signal priority where our software demands so much, it will 100 times over take priority over everything else in the network.
Yeah. Okay.
So if you're trying to do a thing and communicate, it'll give it a headache.
Okay.
So I played with that a little bit just to verify it, because I asked the engineers and they were like, yeah, that's what's up with it. And I'm like, cool, might be something we look into in the future, but also there's other things. But one thing you can do is, because it does have addresses or CAN ID numbers, that when you're doing updates, it makes it not too bad, but I still like to, when I do firmware updates, directly communicate with stuff like from the handheld to the ECU I'm communicating with, and I like to unplug other stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just kind of ruined by other people's systems sometimes when it comes to that because I've had things in a CAN network and it just makes a mess.
Yeah. Speaking of CAN networks, and I'm sure a lot of people listening to this would care to know this, do you know what the time frame is for the Dakota Digital dashes for that bin to come out?
Oh, we're real close on that. It's just
Mm-hmm.
a lot of communication back and forth, those little tweaks here and there. Hey, this would be better. This would be cooler. People would like this more. We're concerned about that. We're not concerned about this.
Mm-hmm.
Just those little tweaks. That's just what we're working out.
Yep.
And, when we get to that handshake point, it's going to be, there'll be a lot of work he'll have to do about saying, look at what we're doing now.
Yeah.
But, yeah, we're working as fast as email will let a guy.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Very cool.
But it's kind of a weekly communication thing. It's,
Sure.
Back and forth, like, we did this, can you do that? And I think there's
I know that's not my
like
realm.
one thing
Yeah.
left or something like that, and it's like simple.
I know it's not my realm. I just wanted to ask because that reminded me of it. So
Which one are we on, dude?
right here,
The top?
I just rolled it down.
K-Rider 160. Would be nice to get an in-depth video on building the timing map and the tuning software. Yeah, I mentioned that in the last video, I think, is the fact that that's stuff we're going to go over. The only caveat I have to be very clear about when I make that video is the fact that the timing values I'm doing for my video may not be right for your engine.
Right.
So
Correct.
if I'm putting 27 degrees on my motor, you may go to 27, and it definitely isn't right for yours.
Yeah.
Or maybe more, maybe less.
Yeah. I will say we are doing we're doing advanced tuning software videos, and we've chosen, at least recently, to do them on actual vehicles and not on a test stand, which is great. The only problem with that is the
Mother
weather.
Nature.
The only problem with that is the weather. And so you should be seeing some of those very, very soon.
All right, so maybe not the only problem. See what?
No, it's not the only problem, but it's the main problem.
We got it's pouring rain, or it's 200 degrees, or there's a train, or I'm testing launch control and destroy the transmission in our test
That
vehicle.
also
There's
does not
that.
help.
So
I guess maybe
we
two
did the
things.
tuning, but the thing is that we're doing tuning stuck in second gear. So there's a check ball.
Well, that's not helpful. So
It's not. Well, it has first and second, but it's there's a check
Sure.
ball in the separator plate that's hammered its way through from me absolutely
Sure.
abusing the stock transmission attached to an LS in a Blazer.
nice. All right, here we go. Jenkins 137. How do you recommend O2 setup with a single turbo LS? I've already got an AEM O2 sensor in the car, doing an LS swap, and wanted to know if I could run one O2 sensor on the driver's header with one on the downpipe, or just run the one on the downpipe and ditch the AEM sensor and gauge. It's a fairly good question.
18 to 24 inches past your turbo.
Mm.
If you put it before the turbo, there's a lot of back pressure. It'll do some funny stuff with a wideband
Yeah.
O2 sensor because it does have a pump inside of it.
Do they need our O2 sensor, or can they use the AEM? Is he meaning...
If your AEM is the same AEM I have, which is likely the same AEM, you're using a Bosch LSU 4.9 O2 sensor with the AEM gauge. You can plug that into our system too.
Okay.
It's just a Bosch LSU 4.9.
Yes.
The AEM is fast. It's a fast O2 sensor in how it reads, but if you take a cutter and cut them apart, you can't tell left from right on the whole thing, other than what they're laser etched on the side. A lot of these aftermarket 4.9 LSU ones, when they're Bosch design, unless you bought them out of a crate on the coast somewhere, you're pretty much getting them from Bosch.
Yeah.
And some form of quality there. So, yeah, I've used an AEM on my Killshot. I've used one of our main competitors' O2 sensors on my Killshot. I've used some no-name having ones off of eBay on it which they lasted good for a week and a half, and then they both went bad.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I've used them just to play with them.
Yeah.
You know, I've had some very expensive ones. I've had some very cheap ones, and they're all really close. Now they're all different calibrations because they're all calibrated differently from the factory, but slightly.
Sure. Make sure to set up 102 sensor in the startup wizard. That'll probably be fairly obvious,
Yeah.
but if you are just running one, just run one on the start wizard.
Yep. DUW Garage Project. Curious if a fresh engine with a new cam can be broken in with the Killshot, or if break-in with a carburetor is preferred. Depend if you're doing a lot of motor builds and you don't have like a solid, like if you're like cookie cutter in the same motors over and over again, and you have a good tune for the Killshot, that's one way to go. That's not a problem. I've done it, but I got it started up and made some quick adjustments just off of knowing some numbers, and did a successful break-in with no issues. The when it comes into that kind of stuff, if you already have a shop carburetor for engine break-ins, stick it on there, because you already know everything that carburetor is going to be. And until you actually have a solid tune for that delicate procedure right there, especially when you do the break-in, the heat cycles, this, that, and the other, you just want to have the most solid thing you could possibly have. If you have no solid tune on that Killshot for that initial break-in, if you don't plan on making a tune even before it gets up to temperature, then I'd stick with that. And it sounds counterproductive, but it's honestly the best advice, the safest way, especially if you have a known good one.
That's a great question.
Carburetors are dumb in a smart way.
Our next one here is by John M7265. He says, got a question. I'm running a 408 CI LQ4 with a comp 0.624 by 617. 113 LSA
You know what that means?
camshaft. I do not know what that means. I'm assuming this is the dimension of the camshaft with the brand.
Well, the 113 LSA is a never mind. You want to write it?
Here we go. Well, here's the question. Here's
on
this camshaft, along with the TBSS intake and 90 millimeter throttle body, 10.31 compression should be used. Should I be using the mild fuel table or race? Thank you in advance. That's a lot. I'm going to leave that to you.
What I would do is I would put it on the mild fuel table. I would go into the fuel table offset after you ran the wizard, and I'd knock 20% out of it straight out of the gate. I'd start it up and see how stable the idle was and look at your comp percent, and then ease the fuel back in accordingly. And then set that as your base for idle. As it gets to temperature, adjust a little bit. And I'd do that with the learning off. And then whenever it got the temperature, I'd let the learning take over and see how much it's moving that learning table around, load it up a little bit, do a thing. I think your best luck is going to be on a mild table. The race is going to be very aggressive type stuff. That's where, when you get to the race side of it, the numbers get so funny that if you can run a vehicle with a brake booster, you're not going to be having the race cam selection done. If you have a brake booster and it's a vacuum brake booster, then you'll be in the mild categories. You'll be pretty close. You should be at like 70 kPa at idle-ish.
Would you run it on a race cam out the gate? Could you just run it on race cam out the gate?
I've got this huge thing. I like to start at stock. Just really depending.
Even with this?
Even with that, I mean, it's a high compression motor with an aggressive mild cam, but I would still set it to a mild cam setting. Because you're going to be working in a weird area of the table, you're going to need the extra fuel, but I'd knock the fuel out about 20% and then ease it back in appropriately.
Would you ever open up a Killshot, Jackpot, any one of our systems right with a race cam right out the gate?
Never needed to. There's never been an aggressive enough setup that I've been doing that I required to do that. Okay. That's also a thing where...
Which is saying something as the senior technician for Ace's Fuel Injection.
Sure.
So, that's interesting. Okay, very cool.
A lot of people, they'll have like a BTR Stage 3 cam, and they've convinced themselves that it's a racing cam.
Yeah.
No, they may be racing their car, but you're not having a 700 lift. You're not having near atmospheric, no vacuum having motor at idle where it sounds like it's hitting every other cylinder.
Okay.
It's one of those deals. Like that's one of those things where when you're in race cam, I mean, you nearly need to have a split table, which we don't offer yet, where you're running alpha in to split speed density table.
Thank you all for joining us. If you like this episode of Tech Tuesday, please leave a like down below. If you have any questions about ACEs or EFI in general, we'd love to see those comments down below of this video so that we can get to it in our next Tech Tuesday video. Also, if you have friends or family interested in EFI, shoot them our way. They have questions. We'd love to answer them here. But yeah, we thank you very much for watching this episode, and we will see all of you guys in the next one. Bye for now.
Wow.